good evening, everyone. Where this week's Torah portion is called Vayera. And for me, it's an amazing portion because it's so similar to what is happening in the world today. We see such a level of incredible immorality going on in the world, more and more, the things that I read. And this is what this week's portion is talking about. So if you will allow me, Miriam, welcome back. And Jerry, nice to see you. So remember, I welcome comments and I welcome interruptions. And we begin our portion at, let me just make it a little bit larger, zoom in, we're in Genesis chapter 18. And it says, we're talking about Abram, when it says the Lord appeared to him. And when we say the Lord, it's Yud He Vav He. What that means, how he appeared to him, we don't know. And it says by the terebinths. The terebinth is a tree. Actually, I looked it up just before the class. It's where they get turpentine from, of Mamre, as he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. I'm sure it must have been hot and they had no air conditioning. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and three men, these were men, it says, Anashim, so we know they're men, stood over against him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed down to the earth and said, "My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, don't leave, I pray you, from your servant. Don't go away. Let me fetch a little water and wash your feet and recline under the tree. And I will bring you some bread and stay ye your heart." Isn't that a beautiful expression? It's like relax after, all you've, after that you shall, you can go. For as much as you come to your servant. One of the things that's so important for us to know is that in the Middle East, hospitality was extremely important. And you'll see later on what Lot does because the hospitality is so important. And they said, "So do as you have said." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it and make cakes." And Abraham ran to the herd and fetched a calf, a good and tender calf, and gave it to his servant and hastened to dress it. Now look at this. He took curds, which is milk or cream, and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they ate. So what do you think about this? Milk and meat. They mixed milk and fleischer. What do you think, Jerry? You're on mute.
I think you mentioned that previously, that the restriction was the singular fact not to boil the kid in its mother's milk, especially at the same time.
It had more to do with compassion and to stay away from paganism than it did from eating milk and meat.
Right, I think you mentioned that too. If you want to say some more on it, as you did previously.
There's really not much to say. I know a lot of people will have their ideas, but for me, the Torah is clear. And they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She's in the tent." And he said, "I will certainly return to you next year in the same time, in the same season. And your wife, Sarah, shall have a son." And Sarah heard in the tent door, which was behind him. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, very old in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So she no longer was ovulating. And Sarah laughed within herself. And you see the word here, titzchak, which is where we get the word yitzchak, laughter. Sarah laughed. "After I am old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord also being old?" And the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I surely bear a child who I am old?" I love this line. Is anything too hard for the Lord? So we need to remember that no matter what we're going through, is anything too hard for the Lord? At the set time, I will return to you when the season comes round, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I didn't laugh, because she was afraid. And he said, no, but you did laugh. I mean, I remember there was a time when I was so afraid to say the truth of something that I did because I was a little bit ashamed. But we can't hide anything from God. And the men rose up from there and looked out towards Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on their way. You know, he was polite. He brought them to the door and went with them. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that which I'm doing? He was sending the men to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, saying that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known to the end that he may command his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of the Lord, to do righteousness and justice, to the end that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So I like to read this again. Abraham shall become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. Now, it says here, a mighty nation, Lagoy Gadol. So, to me, this means the future nation of Israel. All the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. It doesn't say in them and in the people, it says in him. Is that what it says? Then neverhu bo kol goye haaretz. So it's the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him to the end that he may command his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of the Lord, to do righteousness and justice. This is what God wants from us. To that end, the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. The Lord said, surely the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is exceedingly grievous. And I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me. And if not, I will know. And the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, and Abraham stood before the Lord. Abraham drew near and said, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? It was impossible. It's like even today, we question during the Holocaust, how is it that so many innocent people, righteous people, died with the wicked? Perhaps there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you sweep it away then? Will you destroy it and not forgive the place because of the 50 righteous that are in it? That be far from you to do in this matter. Don't do that, Lord, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do justly? The Lord said, okay, if I find 50 in Sodom, I will forgive the place all for their sake. Then Abraham said, I've taken upon me to speak to the Lord, but who am I but dust and ashes? Perhaps if there are 5 less, 45, would you destroy it? And then he said again, what about 40? And God said, I won't do it for 40. And then he said, don't be angry. Let me speak. Perhaps if there be 30. And God said, I won't do it for 30. He's so compassionate, our God. He's so patient with us. And he said, behold, now I've taken upon me to speak to the Lord, perhaps 20. I guess he himself was doubting how many righteous people were in the land of Sodom. He says, okay, I won't destroy it for 20. And then he said, Lord, don't be angry, but let me speak one more time. Perhaps 10. And he said, I won't destroy it for 10. And then he went on his way. He wasn't going to hear any more. And as soon as he left speaking to Abraham, Abraham returned to his place.
Just the one thing about, like before, when you said you brought up the Holocaust again, and the righteous did die with the wicked, so he, in this case, God protects the righteous. I mean, maybe, I don't know how to answer that, myself. I look at that and I say, how do I answer that? You know what I mean?
We can't. We don't know. We
All I
really
can-
don't know. I can't imagine that everybody who died was not righteous, but I don't know. I don't have an answer. I know that Noah was righteous in his generation and he was saved on the ark. So I don't have that answer, Miriam.
Okay.
I don't know what you think about that, Jerry.
I don't have a comment at this time.
Okay, let's continue.
Just sorry, and to not, I don't have an answer except to say that I believe God is a God of mercy.
Yes,
So just to not be able to answer this question doesn't change the truth that he is a God of love and mercy.
yes. And sometimes good people do suffer for the innocent. I remember, even a simple example, like when we were in school, if one person did something wrong, the whole class was forced to stay after school. And let me tell you, that person thought twice before doing it again, because they knew everybody else was going to be punished because of them. So hopefully that, I mean, there's so many, this is a whole discussion on its own.
Well, I heard, I'll make a comment here, Peggy. They
Yes,
say that as Jews, we are responsible one for the other.
yes. Yeah, we are. It's like what, when Cain said to God, am I my brother's keeper? Well, the answer is yes, we are our brother's keepers. Now here it says 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot sat at the gate of Sodom, and Lot saw them and rose up to meet them, and he fell down on his face to the earth, and he said, behold, my lords, turn aside, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night. Wash your feet, and I shall rise up early and go your way. So Lot saw these men. There were 2 men, 2 angels who came to Sodom, and Lot saw them. He had learned from his uncle Abraham, and he invited these guests, these strangers, to come into his home, to spend the night there, to wash their feet again. Rise up early and go your way, just like Abraham did. And he urged them, and they turned in, and he entered the house, and he made them a feast. And he baked unleavened bread, and they ate. I wonder if it was Pesach at that time. I'm not sure. And before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, compassed the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. And they called out to Lot and said to him, where are the men that came into your house tonight? Bring them out that we may know them. In the scriptures, wherever you see the word Yodea or Yadat, Nada, it's an intimate way. These men were wanted to commit acts of homosexuality, of sodomy. And Lot went to them and shut the door after them. And he said, I beg you, my brothers, don't do so wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters who have not known man, 2 virgin daughters. Let me, I beg you, bring them out to you and do to them whatever's good in your eyes. Only to these men do nothing, for as much as they've come under the shadow of my roof. That's how much hospitality was willing to give up his own daughters instead of these 2 strangers. But he knew who they were, I'm pretty sure. And they said, stand back. This one fellow came to live here and he's playing judge with us. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. And they leaned up, they pressed sore upon the man, they pushed him and drew near to break the door. But the two men put forth their hand and brought Lot into the house and shut the door, and they struck the men who were at the door with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. They couldn't find the door anymore. And the men said to Lot, hast thou here any besides son-in-law, sons, and thy daughters? And whoever you have in the city, bring them out of this place. Excuse me. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is so great before the Lord. And the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Jerry, could you read while I catch my breath, please?
And Lot went out and spoke unto his sons-in-law, who married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed unto his sons-in-law as one that jested.
So they didn't take him very seriously, just like the people, I'm pretty sure, when Noah was building the ark, I'm pretty sure they didn't take him very seriously, the sons-in-law. Okay.
And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters that are here, lest thou be swept away in the iniquity of the city. But he lingered, and the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him. And they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be swept away. And Lot said unto them, oh, not so, my lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast shown unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest the evil overtake me, and I die. Behold, now this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto him, see, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow the city of which thou hast spoken. Hasten thou, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of this city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot came unto Zoar. Then the Lord caused to rain upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of the heavens. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the city and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt.
Remember that Lot had chosen that part of the world because it was so beautiful. It was so green and so fertile. And if you go there now, it's where the Dead Sea is. And I think they've even found the pillar of salt that they believe was Lot's wife. And God was trying to show us here, don't look back. If you've had a life in the past that has not been good, don't look back. Look forward and trust in him. Is there anything too difficult for God?
And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked out towards Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the land went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroys the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. And Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters.
All right, let me continue.
And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth.
So here we see that they thought it was like an apocalypse. It looked like the whole world, like a Hiroshima. Everything was gone. So they thought that they were the last. There is not a man on the earth. They didn't think they would ever be able to continue the line of their fathers. And they said, come, let us give our father some wine, make him drunk, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he knew not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight and go in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed for our father. And they made their father drink wine that night. And the younger arose and lay with him. And he knew not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. So to me, this was a miraculous birth, because how would they know just at that time that both of them were fertile? To me, it's like we see this in all the mothers of Israel, where God opened the womb of the now. And here, look at what's coming next. The firstborn for a son called Moab, the same as the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger was born a son called Ben-Ami, and the same is the father of Ammon until this day. Later on, we're going to see that Moab, there was a young woman who lived in Moab, and her name was Ruth. She became the great grandmother of King David. And Ammon, Naamah, King Solomon married Naamah, who was an Ammonite. And so both of these, both of this line is in the line, ended up being in the line of Judah. And Judah is who we believe our Messiah is coming from the line of Judah. And what this is showing us, that we cannot boast about our pedigree, because we come from incest. We have to be honest about who we are. If we do great things, it's because of God, not because of us. And here's another story that's very interesting. Abram journeyed from there to the land of the south, again to the Negev. And he lived between Kadesh and Shur, and he journeyed into Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She's my sister. And Abimelech, king and Gerar, said, and took Sarah. He did exactly the same thing that he did when they went to Egypt the last time. He didn't learn. And God came to Abimelech in a dream and said, Behold, you're going to die because of the woman you have taken. She is his wife. And Abimelech did not go near her. And he said, Lord, will you slay even a righteous nation? Didn't he say to me, she's my sister? And she herself said, he's my brother. In the simplicity of my heart and my innocence, I've done this. And God said to him, yes, I know. The intentions of your heart were right. You have done this, and I have withheld you from sinning. Therefore, do not touch her. Now, therefore, he restored the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. And you, if you do not restore her, you will surely die, you and all that are yours. And Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were afraid. So then Abimelech called to Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? Where did I sin against you that you brought all this on my kingdom and on me? You have done deeds that you shouldn't have done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What did you see that you have done this thing?" And Abraham said, "Because I thought the fear of God was not in this place." But we see that it was. "And they will slay me for my wife's sake. Moreover, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And so she became my wife." So it was a half truth, a half lie. "And it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, 'This is your kindness that you showed me. Every place that you will come, say he's my brother.' Because the custom of the day was that they would take his beautiful wife and they'd kill him. So Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servant and women servant and gave them to Abraham and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, 'Behold, my land is before you, dwell wherever you want.' And to Sarah he says, 'I've given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is for you a covering of the eyes to all that are with you. Before all men, you are righteous, you are right.' And Abraham prayed to God. And it's interesting here because it says, God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservant, and they bore children. So he had stopped up their wombs, and here he opened their wombs again. For the Lord had fast closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. You know, the scriptures are very clear. God always works within nature. He does miracles by opening and closing wombs, but it always had to do with the man and the woman having a union. But giving birth is in God's hands. That's why later on, this whole story about Joseph and Miriam, they were Jews. They lived in Israel. She was engaged to Joseph. The whole story about her being a virgin is very different than what the Christians have made it out to be, because they say that the Holy Spirit came upon on Miriam and she conceived. Nowhere in the Torah does it make room for a story like this. Most probably what happened was because they were two young people. In Israel, they were already engaged at the age of 13. And there are some 13-year-olds who have not menstruated, have not had children. So most probably it was that she had not menstruated yet, and God opened her womb. So by opening her womb, we have a miraculous birth. But the whole idea of the Holy Spirit coming upon her is a completely pagan notion. Because if that were the case, because she was already married in the sight of all the people, as soon as they were engaged, they were married. If somebody else made her pregnant, even if it was the Holy Spirit, who Christianity says is one of a Trinity, then it's like having her commit adultery, and God would not do that according to Torah. The only way that Christians could sell such a story is by getting rid of the Torah. And the Lord remembered Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had spoken. It's not that he forgot her. It's here what he's doing is he's keeping his word, which he always does. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the same time, at the set time that God had told them that this was going to happen. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, Yitzchak, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Yitzchak, she made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh on account of me. I mean, if someone said to me, if I heard God say, Peggy, you're going to have a child now, I would laugh too. And Sarah said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse a child? For I have borne a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne, making sport. Now our sages say that this making sport had a little bit of a sexual connotation. He was being inappropriate with Isaac. I don't know, but this is an interpretation. So she said to Abraham, get rid of this bondswoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, with Isaac. And the thing was very upsetting to Abraham because he loved his son. And God said to Abraham, don't be grieved because of the lad and because of your bondswoman, your servant. Listen to Sarah, listen to what she says. And Isaac shall seed be called, for in Isaac shall seed be called to thee. Isaac was the chosen one. And also the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is your seed. So from Ishmael, we later are going to see 12 princes come who have become very prosperous, and they're also from Abraham. So Abraham arose early in the morning, took bread and water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and strayed into the wilderness of Beersheba. Now, what an important thing to remember is that, or to know, is that at the time, there was a law in the land that if you didn't want, they would have several women, several wives. If there was only one who was going to inherit, then Abraham had to send the others away, so that if you sent away the son and the mother, they could not claim inheritance. They were going to break that bond. If he remained, he would be able to receive part of the inheritance of Abraham. And the water in the bottle was spent, and she cast the child under. She put the child under one of the bushes, and she went and she sat down against him, over a good way off, like from a bow. What do you call it?
Bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow. And because she couldn't stand the thought of that her child might die, she couldn't look upon the death of her child, and she sat against him, and she raised her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called out to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is wrong, Hagar? Do not fear. God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, hold him fast by the hand, and I will make him a great nation. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the water and gave the lad to drink. And God was with the lad. He was with Ishmael, and he grew, and he dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. Later, we're going to see the two sons, the twins, Jacob and Esau. Esau also became an archer. He knew this story. He knew Ishmael. This was his uncle. They're all part of the family. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife from the land. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the captain of his host, spoke to Abram and said, God is with you in all that you do. They knew. These kings knew. So swear to me, by God, that you will not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my grandchildren, but according to the kindness that I have shown you, you shall do to me, to the land wherein you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. He made an oath to take care of Abimelech. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of the well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I didn't know who did that, and you didn't tell me. I didn't hear of it till today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two made a covenant. This is really important. It's important when we're looking at what a covenant is. A covenant is an agreement between two living people, two living individuals. When people say that the New Testament is like a covenant, has nothing to do with it. A testament is you make a living will, and what do you call it? When you make your will, you're making a testament. It's for the people after the person dies, and God cannot die, so it cannot be a testament. The whole thing is made up by a religion. It has nothing to do with the Torah. But here, the two made a covenant, and Abraham set 7 female lambs from the flocks by themselves. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what are you doing? What do these mean, these 7 female lambs that you've set aside? And Abraham said, take these 7 female lambs, that they be a witness to me that I have dug this well. So it's like an agreement, and they have brought something for this agreement. Therefore, they called the place Beersheba. I have a friend who lives in Beersheba. It's amazing. It's still there from this time, because they swore, both of them. Be'er means well, and Sheva means oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba, and Abimelech rose up and called the captain of the host, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God, El Olam. And Abraham traveled or lived in the land of the Philistines for many days. Now we're going to go to just 22, verse 24. Now it came to pass, now this is a very, very powerful portion. It came to pass that God tested Abraham. How many of us are tested in our lives? I don't know how many of us are tested as much as Abraham was. And said to him, Abram, and he said, Hineni, here I am. And he says, take now your son, your only son. Now we know that it wasn't his only son. He had Ishmael, but this was the son that was chosen, who you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell you. Now you don't, and here it says, Abraham arose early in the morning. We don't hear him arguing. We don't hear him negotiating with God the way he negotiated for Sodom and Gomorrah. 50, how many things? 50 for 45, for 40, for 30. He doesn't question. He just does it. At this point, I'm pretty sure he trusted God so deeply. And he saddled his donkey, and he took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son. He took wood for the burnt offering, and he went to the place which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place. It took 3 days. Can you imagine that trip? Abraham must have, I don't know how many he must have felt inside. And I'm pretty sure Isaac must have known something was going on, because he was not a young man. At this point, he was about 37 years old. He was not a child. He carried the wood. Abraham said to his younger men, stay here with the donkey. I and the lad will go yonder. And it says, we will worship and we will come back to you. Abraham had faith. He knew that something was going to happen, that even if God took him, he would raise him from the dead. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and put it on Isaac, his son. So he was pretty strong. Took in his hand the fire and the knife, and they both went together. And Isaac said to Abraham, my father. And Abraham said, here I am, my son. And Isaac said, here's the wood, the fire and the wood. Where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide. Adonai Yireh. The lamb, Haseh, for a burnt offering, La'olam.
People see this verse and they see that it says God will provide himself, as like they read that he himself will be the lamb.
Exactly. They're reading into it.
Yeah.
They want to say that this is what God did, and that shows that Jesus died for our sins as an offering. But
I wonder in Hebrew, like here, the way it's translated in English, when it says God will provide himself the lamb, like that's not even good English.
Elohim, it says Elohim Yireh, lo, for him, Haseh, le'olah, God will provide. It says lo, him, the lamb. God himself will provide the lamb.
I know, but okay, just the way it's written.
Exactly.
I wonder if it's been tampered with.
Hebrew is very difficult. As I say, it's a language of pictures.
Because God will provide himself the lamb.
It doesn't say to be the lamb or as the lamb.
No, but I mean, it's not good English the way it's written unless you interpret it.
It's very difficult to translate Hebrew into any other language.
No, but you're misunderstanding. My point is that it looks like it's translated or certainly interpreted to mean something else, because in English you wouldn't say God will provide himself the lamb. That sounds like Yiddish.
It should, but it's very Jewish.
Yeah, I'm saying.
It is. God himself will provide a lamb.
Okay.
It's like saying house by you.
Yeah.
It's very Jewish.
No, I know.
Break, yeah.
Anyway.
They came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, laid the wood in order. It's funny that he built an altar. What is it said? Hamizbeach, yeah. Laid the wood in order, bound his son. And imagine, Isaac too had to have faith because he allowed his father to bind him.
Yeah.
He laid on the altar upon the wood. He didn't fight his father. And Abraham stretched his hand and took the knife to slay his son. He was ready to do it. And the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Hineni, here I am. How many of us really can go to that level, no matter what, and say, Hineni, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand upon the son, that boy. Do not do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God. You are a God-fearing man, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, a ram was caught in the thicket by the horns. Now here Christianity says, aha, you see here, you provided the ram because the Lamb of God was coming later. This is what they would say here. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Adonai Yireh, as it is to this day, in the mount where the Lord is seen. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time out of heaven and said, by my name, by myself have I sworn, saith the Lord, because you have done this thing, and if you have not withheld your son, your only son, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your seed like the stars in the heavens, and as the sand on the shore, and your seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have listened to my voice. So Abraham returned to his men. They went up, they went to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. And it came to pass after these things that it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah, she also has borne children to your brother Nahor. And Uz, his firstborn, and Buz, his brother, and Kemuel, father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Elach, and Betuel. Betuel begot Rebekah, and these 8 did Milcah bear to Nahor, Abraham's brothers. And his concubine, whose name was Reumah, she also bore Tabor, Gaham, Tahash, and Ma'akah. So here we see the stage being set for the wife to be provided for Isaac. So there's a few things that really stand out in this portion. When I look at the world and the way it's going with the immorality that we see right and left.
Peggy,
Yeah.
sorry, when I try and put my camera back on, it says, I've never seen this before. The host has asked you to start your video. Okay, now, all right. Well, and now it says you cannot, oh, here it is, okay.
Yeah.
It says you
go.
cannot start your video because the
Okay.
host has
Yes,
stopped.
it's okay, Miriam. We'll talk about it after.
No, okay, now it works.
Yeah. Okay, so, this portion is so rich with meaning and understanding that these stories repeat time and again throughout history. When we become to the point where there's so much immorality, we saw that at the time of Noah with the flood. And here we see it again in Sodom and Gomorrah, where it's completely destroyed by a fire. And it looks like, who knows what came from the heavens, how it was destroyed. But when we just really have to be prepared to turn back to God, to say, Hineni, God, I'm here. And no matter what the tests, no matter what the trials are that you're going to put me through, I'm going to stay faithful to you. And it's not easy, but we have to find that within ourselves to trust him. Because to me, the judgments that are going to come upon this earth are going to be terrible. They're already happening. The plagues of Egypt are hitting us in various ways when we see the COVIDs and the next strain and the monkeypox and the next thing that hits us because of the immorality of the people. And whether we choose to believe it or not is our choice. But God is telling us clearly what is right and what is wrong. And one of the things that it talks about here is homosexuality. And I know people who believe you're born that way, you have no choice. It's not what the Torah says. God is merciful and compassionate and would not have us born that way if we had no choice. And now they're bringing in more and more rules and regulations that are so abhorrent to God that we're going to see some more judgment coming. And we really need to pray and speak out against it, even though it's hard. So that's our lesson, our Torah portion for today. And are there any comments?
Well, not right now, Peggy.
Okay, Miriam,
Here-
anything more to
Miriam.
say before we close for this evening?
I don't think so. I always have questions. I can't think of one right now.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording, say goodbye to everyone who is listening, and thank you for tuning in to our Torah 101. It's basically what I call it is a very simple reading through of the Torah, even Torah for dummies. It's not that we're dummies, but most people just don't read it. And when we read it, in hermeneutics, which is a system of interpreting the Torah, there are two rules. God will not go back on his own word, and the scriptures speak for themselves. So that's why it's most important to read it. We can go to much deeper depths, but that's not what this group is about. We go through the simple reading of it to see what we can get for our lives. So I wish you all a good evening, and we'll see you again next week. Next week will be Chaye Sarah.